Look, Anthony Albanese is referred to lots of meetings over a long period of time. I really feel for obviously the family, but Graham Fletcher, who's been our ambassador in China for basically the whole time, this has been hanging over him for a good 3 or so years. So for him, nearing the end of his term there, this must be a huge relief. So he's had a big part in it. Everyone behind the scenes at DFAT working on this must be incredibly relieved that it's finally happened. But at the same time, Young Hung Jun is still in prison without any verdict being delivered. So, the work is not done yet.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting that Chinese officials said that she had served her sentence when it wasn't even clear she had ever been found guilty of any crime. The same could apply to him. I mean, how do you think those efforts, or how do you think his case compares to hers?
They're very similar in that they're both born in China, so that in some ways means the Chinese state treats them a little bit differently than, say, Canadians who are born in Canada or Australians who are born in Australia, because they don't recognise people having dual nationality. So in a way, they treat them as though they were Chinese nationals. So there's those similarities. Also, the fact that his trial was in 2021, so he's waited 3 years for a verdict. So it's even more incomprehensible than what's been happening to Cheng Lei, and there doesn't seem to be any movement on that front.
It was a very low-key announcement from the Prime Minister about her return. What do you make of that? Do you think that was intentional? Could that have been part of the negotiations?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there is a concern in both domestic contexts. So there's Albanese's own domestic context of having, a visit planned to China. So it's much easier for him to make the visit now. But also internally within China, if there's a big song and dance about it, this is awkward for them as well, because the prediction is she's been charged with revealing state secrets and so forth. But this is a well-known figure in China. So there's going to be some blowback in China as well. So certainly, it seemed clear back in June that the release was going to happen. Even in Cheng Lei's letter, there was a hint that she was joking about Melbourne weather and so forth in that letter. So I think she knew at that stage the release was going to happen. So domestically on both sides, it's a very sensitive case.
Yeah. Do you think the diplomacy that the Albanese government is taking with China is paying off?
Look, I think so, and I think this is tone matters with China. This is the strange thing. I don't think any substance has really changed between the Morrison government and the Albanese government. What has changed is this much more low-key approach, which is, clear in his announcement today. And, you wouldn't think it matters, but it does seem to matter a huge deal. And if you are, for example, an Australian wine producer who is struggling to find a market for their wines, you'd probably be quite appreciative of this approach.
Indeed, and that comes to his visit later this year, the Prime Minister's visit to China. There is still a lot of items to sort of normalise between our two countries.
There are indeed. I mean, wine, as I just mentioned, it's sort of, along with lobsters, it's kind of the one product that our producers have really struggled to find a substitute for. Plenty of other industries, it wasn't a problem. But for wine producers, you market it for a certain market. You're making the wines for the Chinese market, and then suddenly all of your destination is gone in one stroke. So it's not an easy one to turn around. But it's been gradually happening. There's a few things that have happened recently. Group tours can now come to Australia without any problems. We're back on the approved destination list. So it seems to be working on a range of fronts.
We shouldn't remember, though, that the differences between us remain, and there are several contentious issues too, particularly China's growing expansionism and assertion in the region.
Oh, look, absolutely. And I think it's encouraging that there hasn't been too much of a change of substance on the policy. I mean, there was the stage where China listed its 14 demands of what it wanted to change about Australia. And as far as I'm aware, none of those 14 things have shifted. And yeah, we shouldn't lose sight of some very clear increased ambition in our region, particularly in the Pacific.
Great to talk, as always, Graeme, on a very heartening day indeed.
Indeed, a happy day.